You think drugs are a modern invention, something tied to nightclubs, pharmacies, crime reports, and more. But if you strip away all of that, if you go far enough back, you find something strange. Humans have always been changing their minds on purpose, and in ancient history, they didn't see it the way we do now. To them, drugs weren't an activity that could result in you losing your freedom. It was a place where you could experience true freedom. And certain plants, certain fungi, certain brews were like doors to other worlds. Some doors healed you, some terrified you, some made people believe they were speaking to gods. Even the earliest known intoxicant, alcohol, was never just about pleasure. It likely began by accident. Fruit left to rot, yeast breaking down sugars, turning sweetness into something that changes behavior completely. Early humans would have found it scattered in nature, waiting. And once they understood what it did, they never forgot. By around 7000 BCE, communities in ancient China were already fermenting rice and honey into alcoholic drinks. In Mesopotamia, beer became so important that workers were literally paid in it. In Egypt, beer was part of daily survival, safer than water in many cases, because water sources were often contaminated. But even then, alcohol was not just food or reward, it was social glue. It changed how people spoke, how they bonded, how they mourned, how they celebrated. It softened reality just enough for humans to become more human with each other. And yet, alcohol was only the beginning. Because across ancient India, there are hymns describing something far more mysterious. They called it soma. In the Rig Veda, one of the oldest religious texts in the world, soma is described as a divine substance consumed during rituals. It was said to bring strength, vision, immortality, and direct contact with the gods. One hymn says, "We have drunk soma and become immortal." Not metaphorically, literally in their worldview. Priests would press a plant, filter its juice, mix it with milk or honey, and drink it during sacred ceremonies. Then something would happen, something powerful enough that it became the center of an entire religious system. But here is where history turns strange. The original plant disappeared. The knowledge of what soma actually was vanished from human memory. No one today can agree on its identity. Some suggest a mushroom, others a stimulant plant. Others argue it was a combination of substances prepared in a specific ritual way that no longer exists. What makes soma fascinating is not just the mystery of the plant, it is the fact that an entire civilization built its understanding of the divine around a substance we cannot even identify anymore. It is like losing the instructions to a key that once opened an entire worldview. And India was not alone. In ancient Greece, one of the most important religious experiences in the classical world happened in complete secrecy. It was called the Eleusinian Mysteries. People from all walks of life attended it, philosophers, soldiers, even emperors, but no one was allowed to speak about what happened inside. The punishment for revealing it was death. What we do know is that initiates would fast travel to a sacred site and drink a ritual beverage called kikion. Then they experienced something that changed them permanently. Some later wrote they no longer feared death. Others described visions so intense they could not explain them in ordinary language. Modern researchers have suggested the drink may have involved ergot fungus growing on barley. Ergot contains compounds chemically related to LSD, a powerful hallucinogen. But even if that theory is correct, it still does not fully explain the experience, because the Greeks somehow prepared it safely for thousands of years, without mass poisoning, without collapse of the ritual. That implies knowledge, control, and intention far beyond what we usually attribute to ancient societies. And then there were the plants that did not create visions gently, but tore reality apart completely. Across Europe and parts of Asia, plants like henbane, mandrake, and datura were known and feared. These belong to the Nightshade family, and they contain chemicals that affect the brain in extreme ways. To understand this simply, these substances interfere with the brain's ability to distinguish real from imagined experiences. People could see things that were not there and believe them completely, not as dreams, as reality. Some were used as medicine. In Rome, henbane was used as a form of pain control during surgeries, a state we now call anesthesia, which means putting someone into controlled unconsciousness so they do not feel pain during operations. But in the ancient world, that control was fragile. Too much, and a patient could lose touch with reality entirely. Mandrake in particular became legendary. Its root often looks vaguely human, which led to myths that it screamed when pulled from the ground. People believed hearing the scream could kill you, so harvesting it required ritual precautions. Myth or not, the fear was real. And then there are the mushrooms. Long before cities, long before writing, humans were already interacting with psilocybin mushrooms. Archaeological evidence from rock art in Africa and Europe suggests mushroom-like imagery appearing in ritual contexts thousands of years ago. In Mesoamerica, civilizations like the Aztec referred to them as Teonatocatl, meaning the flesh of the gods. They were consumed in ceremonies involving music, fasting, and prayer. Spanish conquistadors later described these rituals with fear and confusion, interpreting them as devil worship. But within the original cultures, these experiences were sacred. They were seen as communication with higher forces, ancestors, and spiritual realms. The same pattern appears again and again. Across continents, humans discovered substances that altered consciousness and immediately integrated them into meaning systems. In the Andes, coca leaves were chewed by laborers and travelers to reduce hunger, fatigue, and the effects of altitude. This was not recreation, it was survival. In high-altitude environments, coca made life possible. Yet even there, it was sacred. It was associated with ritual offerings and burial practices. People carried coca into the afterlife because it was considered essential for existence itself. And in southern Africa, plants like silicium were fermented and used to elevate mood and reduce anxiety. In China, mineral-based psychoactive mixtures were consumed by elites seeking spiritual clarity, even though they often cause long-term poisoning. What connects all of this is not the substances themselves, it is the human desire behind them. The desire to escape ordinary perception, to find meaning beyond daily life, to feel connected to something larger than the self. Modern society often treats drugs as purely chemical tools or legal problems, but ancient societies treated them as bridges between human and divine, between body and spirit, between life and death. And whether these experiences were truly spiritual or simply neurological does not change one important fact. They felt real enough to build civilizations around. There is another layer to this story that becomes even stranger when you move into colder regions of the world. In Siberia, shamans were known to use a bright red mushroom with white spots, Amanita muscaria. Unlike gentle psychedelics that slowly shift perception, this mushroom does something far more unstable. It does not simply open the mind, it distorts it. People report losing track of time, feeling enormous or microscopic, and entering worlds that felt completely real while being physically impossible. In some traditions, the mushroom was consumed and then urine was reused by others because the body filters some toxins while leaving psychoactive compounds behind. It sounds bizarre, but it was a method of reducing danger while preserving effect. Again, the goal was not entertainment. It was communication with spirits and healing. In the Americas, peyote cactus containing mescaline was used in desert ceremonies. Night-long rituals with singing, drumming, and firelight guided people into altered states that were seen as healing and clarifying. The Aztecs used psilocybin mushrooms in sacred ceremonies, calling them Teonatocatl, the flesh of the gods. And in many of these cultures, visions were not dismissed as hallucinations. They were treated as meaningful experiences worth interpreting. Across all of this, something becomes clear. Ancient humans were not experimenting randomly. They were building entire systems around consciousness itself. They used fasting, music, darkness, rhythm, and plants to guide the mind into specific states. The substance alone was never enough. The ritual mattered just as much. And maybe the most important realization is this: humans are not naturally fixed in one state of mind. Even today, we constantly change it. Coffee to wake up, alcohol to relax, music to shift emotion, sleep to reset everything. Ancient humans simply had fewer tools, but deeper rituals. And perhaps the most unsettling realization is that none of this ever really stopped. It only changed its packaging. The substances are now called medicine or recreational drugs or supplements or pharmaceuticals, but the underlying behavior is identical. Humans are still trying to shift perception, still trying to quiet pain, still trying to reach something beyond the narrow frame of everyday awareness. The difference is that ancient humans treated these states as sacred experiences that required preparation, guidance, and respect. Modern humans often experience them in isolation, without context, without ritual, and sometimes without understanding what the mind is actually doing in those moments. So when you hear about ancient people drinking strange brews, or chewing bitter leaves, or entering sacred caves to see visions, It is easy to think of it as superstition, but it might be closer to something else entirely. It might be early human psychology expressed through ritual, a way of exploring consciousness with the tools they had available. In that sense, ancient drug use was not a mistake or a curiosity of the past. It was part of a long and continuous attempt to understand the most complex system humans have ever encountered, the human mind itself.